So you guys asked for this probably over a year ago. We got a ton of comments to make up the Paragon war suits from the Sisters of Battle, but instead we were going to turn them into Nundums. And that is what today's video is all about. That's right, we're finally getting in the robot. It's tabletop time. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So Nundums, why am I deciding to tackle this project now? Well, if you had missed my previous video that I did on my new Sisters of Battle Covenant, you'll know that I'm trying to build my own unique army for 40k. This is heavily inspired by Bloodborne and Victorian medieval Gothic. Now for a bit of context, I actually started this project in my holiday break, and there's some good reasons why I decided to do this. But before we go into all of that, let's talk about creating some really epic poses for our Gundams. I really want these cool dynamic Gundam poses, and a lot of them are very stiff. They kind of look like this, and it's not cool. I'm also going to try and incorporate that little bit of Bloodborne theming I'm trying to put into my army, but I'm still working on it, and we're going to read through those comments from my previous video in this video. But for now, I've got one Nundum to build up, the leader of my unit, and I need to start hack and slashing my way through to give her a really cool pose. Let's do it. Working my way up to building this particular model, I had a few design choices I needed to make. First of all, I needed to decide what kind of head I wanted her to have. She could either have the helmet or the eye patch, and I thought the eye patch was way more Bloodborne. So for this model, I wanted to also give her the sword and the flamethrower, as well as the missile pods on her shoulders. One of the issues I had run into this model was the piping on the back. Obviously, if you're going to make these in the static pose, then this isn't going to be an issue. However, because I want to make these more dynamic, I know I'm going to have to cut these off and glue them on later. I decided the pose I wanted to go for was her leaping into battle, pushing off from something on the ground and defending with one of her arms. In a lot of the Gundam poses I've noticed, it's typically normal for one of the knees to be very bent. I see a lot of angles where their legs look like a 4 almost.
Open your eyes. Witness the greatest cover-up in human history. Dear God.
So I wanted to try my best to incorporate that into this model. I also started making up her base, which I used the same method I'd done for my 2 previous Nundums. This was a mixture of corkboard and a bit of astrogranite texture, just to blend it all together nicely. In my downtime, I was able to source a couple of these different chains and also plastic tubing that you make friendship bracelets out of. A couple of these did stick on with super glue, but I highly advise using UV resin. You're just gonna get more of a secure bond, and these things can absolutely fall off. So I needed to give my leader a couple of extra pieces to make her look a little bit more Bloodborne-y. And this Dark Angels kit that we got has some really cool stuff in it. There are a couple of things in this box that I found too tempting and had to steal them for my model. One of the first options being the little shield that she has on her side, which also has some purity seals on the back of it. Don't worry, I'm not making any purity seals for this particular project. This box has a ton of them, so I'm gonna glue these on instead. Also from this Dark Angels kit, I stole this skeleton that's on fire. The reason I wanted to take this particular piece was it reminded me of the big Saint Celestine board I had made before that was covered in flames and skeletons as well. So I thought it was a really good tie back to that. This Dark Angels kit had a couple of purity seals as well, so I made sure to steal those and glue those on a bit later. One of the things I realized about my army when it came to incorporating that Bloodborne feel was what type of vibe did I want to take from it. Did I want my sisters to look more like the Hunters or something from Canehurst? And I like both of these vibes a lot, and I think that I will incorporate different things to different models. The Hunter style gives me very militia vibes, while Canehurst is reserved for more of an elite unit or more royalty. So in this case, with Dave's help, we added on a little side cape, which was very regal indeed. With the silhouette all laid out, it was time to do a little bit of putty filling. There were some massive gaps in this model that we needed to fill in to make it look complete. I also added on some of that texture paste for that waxy seal at the top of the candles on her shoulders. After a couple of hours, everything was cured and ready to go. And now we're on to painting her up. So with all the models in my unit converted up and posed so epically like they've just gotten in a fight with a giant kaiju, here's what they look like so far. So I'm all done building my Nundum and she looks so sick. I think all the extra little bits and features have really made her look like the leader of this unit, and I'm really excited to paint her up. Now before I go ahead and base spray her, we're gonna go check out what Dave is doing.
What I'm doing? Well, I'm gonna create some really cool 3D parts. So Jen's experience with Bloodborne is watching me platinum it and develop heart palpitations when I played it on PlayStation, but I adored that game and I actually platinumed it. So when I heard Jen wanted to create a Bloodborne inspired army, I offered to help out. And what I thought would be really iconic for hunters is having these hunter inspired weapons. So I thought I'd make the iconic cover art weapon, the foldable trick weapon saw, into a chainsaw trick weapon. So this is my 40K version of that I've made, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I've said it before, I only dabble with 3D design, but I'm really hoping this turns out well, and if it does, it could be the start of something beautiful, because I've come up with a genuinely cool design for a threaded cane fleur-de-lis Sisters of Battle whip. So please make these videos do well so I can make awesome Bloodborne weapons for Sisters of Battle, because it's really fun. Let's get these on the printer and see how it turned out. Jen, I bring a gift.
Oh my goodness, it's the thing.
I've made my trick weapons. I resized them. They initially weren't really the right size, so I changed the proportions to be a bit less goofy. Hopefully these work. I've printed them in 2 sizes. You've got open and closed trick weapons. If you hate them, you don't have to use them. If you love them, shout me out later in the video.
Yeah, no, these look great. I think that having both options is really cool too, because I'm not 100% sure how I want to pose. Don't eat the resin. I don't know how I'm going to pose her yet, so thank you so much. We'll have a little play and see how we go. Freak. Okay, so in the last video, I asked you guys to leave comments that could lead to building up my Covenant of Sisters. Firstly, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who left a comment on that video. Reading all of them really was a highlight of my week, and you guys have some absolutely amazing ideas. So thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts with me. So I'd seen a couple of comments of people mentioning demon hunting, and I absolutely agree. I think that this Covenant should be about hunting, maybe not specifically demons, but anything that's been tainted. I really love this sort of representation and tying it back with Bloodborne. So I think that this is the ideal goal of this Covenant. There's a comment here from 619 Slipk. Isn't Bloodborne all about the blood from some old eldritch creatures that the character even injects with themselves? This subfaction reeks of heresy. I actually think that sometimes kind of blurring the lines a little bit can be cool, where it kind of also lends to sisters potentially falling to chaos. So I kind of like the idea of borderlining that heresy theme, but let me know what you guys think too. Another comment left by Photoman91 mentions using the blood angels as a sort of hierarchy to the sisters. And again, I think this is really cool. And this is something I think that I would love to incorporate as well, so I have to do a little bit of research to add this on. But I think this is an amazing idea. And a comment here left by Trash Bash Man gave me the suggestion for my Covenant, which was Sisters of the Old Blood, and I think that that is an absolutely perfect name for this Covenant. Okay, I'm absolutely going to get this username wrong, but Mark Go Paul Singh 6193 left the idea of adding tricorn hats. Adding tricorn hats to the hunters is an absolute must. I kind of wanted to add it onto these Paragon war suits, but their heads are kind of half in the robot, so it wasn't going to work, but I absolutely want to do this, and I think this is an amazing comment, so thank you so much for leaving it. A couple of you had mentioned using some of the Bretonia kits that had just come out for Old World as well as Age of Sigmar, and I absolutely agree that some of the pieces in these kits are absolutely amazing. I'm just waiting for a couple more releases from the Bretonia range before I can actually use any of that stuff, just to see what's coming up. I do think it's a really good option, and I definitely want to include them in my customizations. I couldn't find this comment, but someone had mentioned making a Hospilida, but making her into a Plague Doctor. So this is something I'm definitely going to include later on. Thank you so much. That is an absolutely brilliant idea. Something I didn't really talk about in the last video was the idea of Bloodborne's trick weapons. Now this is a universal thing that spans throughout Bloodborne. It kind of is what makes the game unique. The idea of these weapons being one thing and being able to interchange into another. For example, Dave is making up the design for a cane that turned into a fleur-de-lis whip when it became unfolded, and I think this is really cool, but do you guys have any ideas of what you think could be a really cool weapon for a Sister of Battle to turn one thing into another? So again, thank you all so much for leaving comments on that video. I'm even more excited to do this army and customize it up. I think there's just so many brilliant ideas. And the last video video really was a starting point, and moving forward I do want to incorporate more of that Bloodborne feel, but it's going to take me a bit of time to get there. And it really is comments like these that inspire us to keep going. But my sisters aren't done, they're almost there, so I better get back in the hobby room and keep going. But my goodness, it is still summer in Australia and it is so hot and humid and sticky. But we're almost there. Let's do it. So in this project, I'd started off with the other two models in this unit, laying down some colors and sort of figuring out the color scheme I wanted to use. So I had a general idea of what I wanted to do for the leader. While at tabletop time, I was able to get down just a base coat of everything, but I decided to take these models home to do a little bit more work. While I was at home, I finished up adding more of those base colors to everything, and I have to admit at this point, it was looking a bit like a dog's breakfast. Everything was a little bit rough. If I've learned anything from working at tabletop time, it's to trust the process. With my base colors down, I decided to go ahead and start highlighting some areas. For some reason, I usually start off with the red on all of my Sisters of Battle because I feel like the red really pops in contrast and it's a fun place to start. This process still does look a little bit rough as I'm adding in the highlights, but I'll make sure to blend these in a little bit later on. Once I was done with adding all of the volume to the areas, I could start glazing these to blend them into the model a bit better. I also decided to wash down the metal with a black, just to tone down some of the shininess and give it more of that darkish feel. So the guys at Tabletop Time have some absolutely sick lore for their 40k armies. So with some research, guidance, a bit of help from you guys, and from today's sponsor Squarespace, I'm able to finally introduce my new Covenant of Sisters. And I've decided to call them the Sisters of the Old Blood. The Tabletop Time lore library is basically an entire website dedicated to the lore that we have given to our warbands, and all of the stories that go along with it. Over time, we really want these articles to grow to include things like paint schemes, and even a couple of fun facts too. And all of that is only possible through today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you want to get started on creating your own unique website, Squarespace is the website for you. As someone who has a background in graphic design and web building, Squarespace takes all of those complicated pieces and makes it accessible for everyone. Start your website off by selecting one of their many templates, ranging from portfolios to e-commerce, so you can start showing off your goods straight away. But if you're wanting just that little bit more customization, Squarespace has got you covered with their Fluid Engine system, allowing you to drag and drop blocks in a few simple clicks. Fluid Engine is accessible for both PC and/or mobile devices, so your website can look amazing no matter what device it's on. Now, if you're someone that wants to start selling their products online and start making those big bucks, then check out their online store options, allowing you to sell physical and digital products through your store. Or maybe you want to open a physical store. Well, Squarespace yet again has you covered. By using their Square Reader, everything is integrated in one place, allowing you to have a POS system and keep track of inventory. So if you want to get started on creating your own website, head over to squarespace.com/tabletoptime and you can get 10% off your first website or domain. All the links will be down in the description below. A huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. And if you'd like to check out the newest edition of lore, head over to the lore library and see what's possible with Squarespace. All right, that was a lot of talking. I have not only one robot, but I've got 3 to paint up. Whew. Alrighty, so we're on to our final round of painting, and I am back in the Tabletop Time studio. As you can see, I've got a lot of my base colors down and a little bit of a layer painting as well, but these nundums have a really long way to go. First up, I wanted to add in the skin tones and hair, painting these in as carefully as possible, and considering how hard this is that their faces are a little bit sunken into the mechs, I tried my best to keep my hand steady and remained patient throughout the process. For their guns and weapons option, I decided to keep these the same colors that I had used for their armor, establishing this sort of dark emeraldy color, and then using a non-metallic silver for the rest of the weapon. Now moving on to the weapon that Dave had made me. This thing looks super cool and I had 2 different options to choose from. The first thing I needed to do was try and find a hand that fit, as well as a hilt for it to go on. I grabbed the original pieces from these Paragon warsuits, the hilt being from the mace and the hand being from the sword, and made my own little Frankenstein version. I painted this in a similar fashion. I think in the future I want to add some some bloodstains to not only the weapons, but some bits of this covenant, but I'll establish that a little bit later on. Moving on to the final steps of this project, I also totally forgot that my leader has the shield on her shoulder pad. I think it would be really cool to put the new sigil on there. I haven't come up with the design yet, but I think I will in the future. So I'm gonna leave this blank for now and come back to it later. But I think it would be awesome to have something that incorporates that old blood feel. Maybe a skull with blood crying out of its eyes or something really wicked and cool like that. And as always, a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. One of my favorite parts of the month is being able to do Mini Club with you guys. If you don't know what Mini Club is, you get to submit photos of what you're currently working on, and we get to give you some tips or just some friendly advice if you'd like. It's really cool to see what everyone is up to and share our enthusiasm for the hobby all around. It's just a total vibe. If you'd like to consider joining our Patreon, all the links are down in the description below, and we would love your support. Again, thank you to everyone, and thank you for watching this video. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I finally got to build my Nundums and I think they look super cool. Plus I got to incorporate that little bit of blood body covenant thing. I'm super excited and I'm also very tired.
And I helped a tiny bit.
Yes, so let us know what you think down below. All of the comments I read before and suggestions, we want more of them, please. You guys are amazing and have amazing ideas. We would love to share them with you. Speaking of which, and comments that I'd left in the previous video, there is one that I want to share with you guys. SCW 5098 shared this amazing piece of lore. Now I can't do this any justice, I don't have a lore narrating voice, but you do. So would you like to read a little bit of this for us?
So we're like taking them out with a bit of narrative. A planet orbiting a white dwarf star. The pale light of its former sun bleached the blackened surface of volcanic rocks and dead vegetation. Amid the dust storms and